person in Christina's court.
You describe Miss Jelks as the jewel of your empire, and you describe him as the lord of the manor, correct?
Yes.
What a romantic, romantic thing to say about each other. But you're no longer married. True?
True,
Tell me
Honor.
about this beautiful relationship and why we are here today.
First of all, this temporary disagreement can in no way invalidate the love I've had for Shirley over the years. It's been the love of the century, two people, one love, and it's a love that's lifelong. Ms.
Don't
Jelks-
read it, just tell me. It's in your heart anyway, right?
May
Just
I
tell me.
interrupt at some point?
No, let him, he's on a roll.
okay.
Let's just...
Okay.
In the immortal words of Buck Henry, you aren't anybody in America unless you're on TV. But if you're not on television, you don't exist. So for the curious viewer, here's the backstory, the concatenation of events that led me to sue my love of the century, Shirley Ann Jelks, in Christina's court in Houston in 2007 for the sum of $3,500, which I paid, or had paid, to Lenox Hill vets for the sake of her pets, Lucifer, an aged cat, and Alexandra, a puppy, whom Shirley bought after we fell in love, and which she named after me.
He had two pets, Lucifer, a cat, and Alexander, a dog.
Okay.
The dog was named after me, and
Okay.
I appreciate that. But
How long were you married?
we were married 2 years.
2 years. And when did you meet?
We met in 1990.
1990. Was it love at first sight?
Well, I believe, yeah, absolutely, yeah.
And what was this relationship like? Tell me.
We just had good times together. We loved each other. We were very compatible. In Miss Jelks' own words, we're just two people who just intensely love each other.
Il ne faut jamais sous-estimer le rôle que la chance joue dans la vie. Never underestimate the role that chance can play in our lives, said Jean-Jacques Cizini, former bête à pensée of the OAS, during a déjeuner in the kitchen of his Hôtel Particulier at 11 Rue Saint-Louis years ago. And so it wasn't by pure chance or fatum fatalitas which led us, Shirley and me, to take the same downtown bus on that rainy evening in the fall of 1990. On se demande to this day. One wonders.
How did you meet?
On a bus in New York, Shirley had just completed some work for the Census Bureau, and we met in the bus, we exchanged phone numbers, and we were married a couple of months later.
When I first caught sight of her, I said that I admired her sweater, and she replied that she was a census taker and had just interviewed Tommy Tune. That was a time when census takers still knocked on people's doors. There was an instantaneous mutual attraction, love across a crowded room, and my jaded hormones were stimulated. But Tommy Tune, the famous dancer and Broadway star of decades ago, does that not date us? What attracted me to Shirley was not only her looks, but her voice, her lilting Missouri drawl, inscribed in my heart and memory to this day. At that time, Shirley lived on 106th Street and Central Park West, a neighborhood that had not yet been gentrified and was somewhat down at the heels, but sympathique. When visiting her, I felt a sense of adventure, like Mayor Wagner visiting his high yeller paramour in Harlem decades before. In those days, I had a studio apartment on 78th and 1st Avenue. I still recall the thrill of taking the bus, which I nicknamed the Love Express, or since I also spoke Spanish, like Guagua de Amour, from my place to hers. Our amour was great, profound. Shirley, jolie demoiselle, was prévoyante. In her youth, she was 44 when we met, and I was in my early 50s. She had apparently concluded that one of the best ways to please a man was to learn the art of massage. Thus, she took classes and became certified as a masseuse. Lucky for me. A massage by Shirley, which followed being in love, was the closest thing to jhana, or paradise. Her hands over my body relieved me of tension, bringing me sensual pleasures beyond anything I had ever experienced. The carnal bodily comfort of being in her adoring, come-hither arms was glorious, exquisite. But within a month after we met, Shirley imperiously issued her ultimatum: marry me or I'll stop seeing you. Thus, we were betrothed at City Hall on All Saints' Day, La Toussaint, November 1st, 1990, by Justice of the Peace, and celebrated the union of our two souls, bodies, united in passion, with a copious repast at the historic Francis Tavern. My best man was a former teaching colleague, David Clue, Yale University, 58. Sidetracked in life, never realized his potential, and earned his living at that time as a substitute teacher in New York City's public high schools. Yet my best man had studied under Henri Bell, Dean of French Studies at Yale. First years with Shirley were euphoric. We did everything together. Spent evenings at the now closed, much regretted Otto Manelli's restaurant on 85th in York. Enjoyed copious dinners washed down with wine purchased at the nearest liquor store, since the restaurant had no liquor license. Good for the customer, not so profitable for the ownership. I also sprang for a week's vacation in Round Hill, same resort in Montego Bay, where JFK honeymooned with Jacqueline. Bought Shirley an expensive ring from Tiffany's to show how much I loved her. Anything to keep her.
Was it like that for you when you met it? Was it just
yes.
this love that overtook you?
Yes, he rescued me from my civil service job. It made my life more interesting. He liked to go out to dinner. I had a cat before I met him, but suddenly, as soon as I met him, I saw a dog in the window and I bought him.
So animals are important to both of you.
Yes, but I only had two and he had many.
Where'd you get all of these dogs?
I brought the cats back from
Animals?
Africa with me. I brought two of the dogs as well.
Africa?
Yeah. I was as I mentioned, I do volunteer work in Africa for NGOs here, non-governmental organizations. And
are they rare dogs and cats?
No,
or
these are dogs from the
stray?
street. Yeah, strays.
And why take care of them?
It's my general philosophy to help others, not only human beings, but also defenseless animals.
Is it correct that it was the animals who interfered with your relationship?
Somewhat, yes.
On the night of our wedding, he had to go home and walk the dogs. So that's how they interfered.
Didn't you guys live together?
No, he had an apartment. I had an apartment.
So you didn't live together when you were married?
No,
No, we didn't.
I'm allergic.
To dogs?
Yes, and cats.
But you have a dog and a cat yourself.
And I take medicine every day, but they died of old age.
Why get married and not live together?
First of all, he had too many dogs to move in with me. My apartment manager wouldn't allow that.
I had 4 dogs at the time, Your Honor.
So how did that work out with you guys not living together?
Perfectly.
Well,
that's why we got along.
However, we agreed to keep our own apartments, not to live together, because I recall what Shirley told me about her last beau, Bob Toro, who, she said, was always around, and she became bored. There is truth in the aphorism, familiarity breeds contempt. Parenthetically, Shirley confided to me that she thought her former boyfriend was a button man for the mob. Never told her what he did for a living and was close friends with, among others, the singer Keely Smith and Louis Bellson, famed drummer. But Bob also bought her Kentucky Derby tickets, unfailingly, even after they broke up, and was always the gentleman. But I digress. Happiness between two people who love each other is seldom linear, progressing in a straight line, sequential. Rather, there are the hauts et les bas, ups and downs, and what was true for others was true for Shirley and me as well. Recall the words of Ann Miller, late Hollywood starlet and a great dancer, that happiness comes in spurts. The first fissure, indication that things would not go well, occurred when Shirley announced that she would be taking in boarders, renters, but only men, which aroused my suspicions.
First of all, we're talking about $1,000 that I lent Shirley in January 2003 because she said she'd run out of money, despite the fact she had these boarders coming in who were paying good rent.
It was as if she were willing to violate the intimacy that we shared. Male renters, indeed, were Recall one day after I'd helped her move into a new apartment on the Lower East Side in the late 1990s, when that neighborhood, once known as perilous, was becoming gentrified. Art galleries, cappuccino coffee shops, which replaced diners, upscale restaurants, a branch of Blue Note, replaced the mom and pop groceries and substandard housing that had been there before. Working class folks were gradually being supplanted, replaced by artists, sculptors, fashionistas, and for all intents and purposes, the change meant the end of the Lower East Side, as many nostalgically recalled it. Shirley was very much part of this nouvelle vague, or new wave transforming the neighborhood, and how she enjoyed it. Shirley took in a boarder, a locataire, self-described poet by the name of Ron Price. As we emerged from her bedroom one day, I noticed that she had set up a makeshift clothesline just outside of her bedroom with her freshly washed sous-vêtements hung out to dry. An overt invitation, in my opinion, to Mr. Price, a flirtation, and sending a message to her locataire, "I'm available." How else to interpret it? Was my love of the century betraying me with a mediocre poet? I never truly got over that, plus the thousands of dollars I was spending to save her pets. It was a slap in the face, bon gifle, and unforgivable. At least it seemed so at the time.
Pity of all this is, if she had pitched in and helped with my dogs as I was willing to pitch in with and help with her dogs, if she had been willing to come to Africa with me, which I wanted her to do.
You would still be together.
Absolutely.
I had my
Absolutely.
own interest, Your
both our
Honor.
lives would have been much richer and more fulfilled, and we wouldn't be
Why
standing before
didn't
you
you?
today.
I didn't want to.
How long was he away? But how long
movies
was he away?
with popcorn and air conditioning.
Oh, these are year-long assignments.
Year-long assignments.
Yeah.
But then
Yeah.
why marry him? Why marry somebody? Because obviously the
We
love
never
is still there for
fought
him.
until now.
But the thing is that you didn't share in his life. You didn't go with him to Africa. He could have gone for a year. You could have
He was
visited
at my house
for
every
a
week eating my dinners.
So every week, every
Yeah.
single day.
You know, whenever I cooked. I had elaborate dinners.
But is that enough to maintain a marriage?
And
Well,
sex.
that's part of the.
Then why bother getting married? Food and sex. Why bother
We
getting
weren't
married?
married for
Well, Shirley said-
14 of the 16 years we weren't married.
Shirley said, either you marry me or I'll never see you again. But I had no objection to that. It turned out to be fine. It was like destiny, if you believe in destiny, fatum fatalitas. We were really made for each other.
Really?
And it's more about hurt feelings than anything else, as much as it is about the money owed, because I do have to pay property taxes now.
So
which
this
are
love
going up.
just disappointed you in the worst way?
Reviewing my motives for taking Shirley to small claims court, all I can say in my defense is to quote the great journalist Colin Legend, who wrote that there are times when one twist of the knife deserved another, metaphorically speaking. I really didn't need the money, since I was awash in offers for the house and property in Port Washington, with one attorney, real estate developer, asking me bluntly, "What number would you be happy with?" Offer was grosso modo $425,000 for one parcel, on the understanding that buyers would have an option on a second parcel. I took Shirley to court to teach her a lesson. One does not trifle, dally with the love of a lifetime, ours.
I thought she was the love of the century.
She was, but I think we have to move on. And Shirley grew more distant from me as time went along.
Why sue now, Professor?
Because when I asked her for the money finally, because since I helped her out when she needed the money, she wouldn't reciprocate.
I
Just as,
did.
for example, when, well, $1,000
I know, but that's all I had.
It's like the tip of the iceberg. When I would go out of my way, I would take a taxi from the Lower East Side up to the Upper East Side with her pets to be cared for by New York vets. And I would ask Shirley sometimes to take care of my pets, to walk the dogs or anything like that. This was something that was just completely beneath her. Nor would she even be considered enough to say, "Alex, okay, I realize that you expended all this money and perhaps you do need money to pay taxes on your place in Port Washington. They're about $25,000 a year, by the way.
That
right
makes
now.
sense what he's saying, Shirley. I mean, you
And,
must have...
Shirley's defense was that I only asked for the money back to support my African wife, Juliana, who had been our cuisinière in Ghana. at the guest house while I was lecturing at Methodist University. At the guest house on Exhibition Road in Mount Saman.
That's you in Africa, no?
Yeah, that's me crossing a bridge in the lower, let's see, in Guinea. And
how exciting must that be? You never had the desire to even go for a few days to figure out what this was like?
We went to Jamaica together.
Yeah, that was 5 days and staying in a luxury resort, what is it, Round Hill Plantation. It was great.
I mean, you really had no desire to see what he does.
I like to go to the Hilton, I go to Atlantic City, you know, I like luxury.
Yeah, so do I, but once in a while, to keep a good marriage, you do what the husband or you do what the wife does. You understand what they do. That's not enough, though, to maintain a marriage. It just seems that you're not, he's hurt, betrayed, he wished this could have been different.
But he got this hurt and betrayed after he remarried, Your Honor.
Really? He never asked for money before?
No, that's not quite, I disagree with that.
There was an age gap between us of over 40 years, and our liaison was strictly a mariage de raison, so that she could get a visa for the U.S. Juliana came from a good family. Father was a police inspector, and I did not want her to waste away in Ghana, where hopelessness is the rule and not the exception. It was an altruistic gesture, nothing more, but Shirley viewed it otherwise.
So the fact that he got remarried, you think, is the reason why he's asking for the money?
Absolutely.
But here's my take on this. Shirley wasn't interested. She just didn't care. I mean, no disrespect there. She just wasn't interested in what you were interested in. When she got married to you, was she in it 100%? She wasn't. I think you just got married just to get married, Shirley, because when you get married, you don't just, I don't want to do anything he wants to do. It's a give and take. I think that any couple needs to meet in the middle, sharing what each other likes, at least experience it once in a while. The marriage was never a priority for either one of you guys. It was more for him, but less for you. And because I think he was so easy and he was such a pushover in things, when he let you borrow the money, you just let it slide until you figured he would push for the money, because you do admit in your statement, and you have admitted, I owe him money. However, though, Professor, I think by your own admission, all these expenses and the vet bills that you paid for Shirley, she never asked you to do it. You did it because you love those creatures. And you wanted to make sure that they got the best care possible. So based on all the evidence, she still owes you $2,500 from the attorney fees. You let her borrow $1,000 in 2002, which she deposited in 2003, right? In January of 2003. Therefore, total, she owes you $3,500, okay? That is my decision.
All rise.
Judge Cristina has ruled in favor of the plaintiff and has ordered the defendant to pay $3,500.
They met at a bus stop in New York City and got on the wrong bus. Alexander was a romantic who imagined an epic romance. Love of the century, he called it. Shirley called him the Lord of the Manor. His adventures were African safaris. Hers were Atlantic City slots. See you in court.
On a stone bench in Central Park at 72nd and 5th Avenue, there are chiseled the following words in Latin. Altieri vivace ponte, si vis tibi vivere. To live for others is to live for oneself. This is my general philosophy of life, and hoped it would be Shirley's as well. Espérance trahie, hopes betrayed. Yet even after our appearance in Christina's court, which awarded me $3,500, Shirley and I continue to see each other, enjoy each other's company, and at the risk of seeming repetitious, her massages left me drunk with love, and the Arabic word Jannah, meaning paradise, will not be overstating it. Shirley had it, an indefinable quality that drew us to each other that was eternal, lifelong, despite her dalliances. What is better than nirvana? Ann Miller, quoted above, Hollywood starlet, dancer, said it best. Happiness comes in spurts. Upon my return to the States in 2009 from a second tour de service in Senegal, the African nation of Leopold Senghor, classicist, and with 3 more rescue pets to look after, I had a lot on my mind and forgot to call Shirley. Mon Dieu, do I not regret in retrospect my negligence? where while surfing the internet in January 2010, I came across a succinct notice that Shirley Jelks, born 1946, was deceased. I took the subway to City Hall and checked with the young lady in Vital Records who confirmed the avis de décès. Later that day, I stopped by the small apartment complex on 11th Street where she had lived. Queried some of the neighbors who told me that Miss Jelks contracted cancer, and according to them, took it very hard. Dreams of a lifetime, up in smoke. In the New York apartment that was the fulfillment of a lifetime, well, she had had it barely a decade. But the main worry of other owners in the complex seemed to be who would replace her. I looked through the window into her apartment where I saw boxes of her belongings neatly stacked up. It was as clean as a pin. But it was as if Shirley had never lived there, and after all this time, memories of our many repasts and of being in love there have dimmed. How fleeting life is, how evanescent and short-lived. I'm reminded of an elegy by Edgar Guest, Michigan's poet laureate, which he entitled The Song. None knows the day that friends must part. None knows how near is sorrow. If there is laughter in your heart, don't hold it for tomorrow. Then let us sing for all we're worth, nor give a thought to sorrow. None knows what lies along the way. Let's smile with smiles we can today. Or more succinctly, as the disc jockey Harry Harrison, one of the good guys of FM radio of the last 3 decades of the 20th century, put it, if you see someone without a smile, get one of yours. Recall the first time Shirley and I were in love, on a Saturday afternoon, a week after we had met on that downtown bus. We traveled up to the Cloisters and stopped off at the Maple Leaf Cafe. I kissed her on a bench in Van Cortlandt Park before we returned to her apartment. When I left to go back to the Upper East Side, a mist, a fog had fallen upon the city, and the night was gentle. I cannot recall when I have ever been happier than on that evening so long ago.